Namaste and welcome to another episode of In Pursuit of. Every year, the third Thursday of May, that's a tongue twister, the third Thursday of May is celebrated as Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Did you know that? Well, I didn't. And when I found out, I decided to research a bit more about it. And in that process, I discovered that in the last 1 year, there has been a major overhaul in India to create a more inclusive environment for people with disabilities. Now, that is truly commendable. But you know what? This is just a few steps in the direction of allowing people with disabilities to enjoy their freedom and rights. Now, it's interesting to note that the people with speech and hearing impairment do not get the kind of attention that someone in a wheelchair does because their disability is invisible and they actually get completely ignored. Today, I have with me a gentleman who quit his banking career and decided to set up an organization called Teach to educate those who cannot hear and speak. I have with me AMAN Sharma, and he is in pursuit of.
We're building an ecosystem for the speech and hearing impaired students in India.
So, Aman, tell me a little more about Teach, and then we will get into the details of your journey on how you got here.
So Teach is a higher educational institute that we have built in Mumbai and Delhi. The data says that 99% of these children drop out immediately after 10th standard.
Oh.
Because since they cannot study further, they are not with us.
What kind of schools have they actually been studying in before they've come to you?
Though we talk about inclusion here, but if we just take a simple case where our children or ourselves, where we studied, do they have any other student with hearing loss? At the end, in those regular schools, these students are not able to access that.
Okay.
Now, government identified this and they created special schools for these set of population. Now, in these special schools, there is subjects like English, mathematics, science are totally absent. They study subjects like milk and milk products, hygiene, all those very traditional vocational subjects. And as a state board, it allows any school to select any 7 subjects. So this philosophy of that they will not be able to do much in their life prevails in the schooling system. On the other hand, the higher education is inaccessible. So they are stuck in between. And that is why these students, they opt out of studying further and then get into any blue collar jobs which are available to earn the livelihood. But at the end, in those jobs, there is no career progression happening. So the data says that more than 80 to 85% of this population still in our country is either underemployed or unemployed.
My goodness, and I can imagine because now we have started seeing, speech and hearing impaired, people with, in restaurants and cafes, but that's also a new thing. It's only in the last 5 years or so, 6 years. So what do you do at Teach exactly?
So at Teach, the whole idea starts where after the 10th standard, when these students come to us, that we take an assessment to understand what is the knowledge base of these children and what is the aptitude of that child. Once we understand the knowledge base, that is the English, maths, computer skills, and the aptitude, we decide whether the child needs a foundation year or it can be directly progress into the 11th standard.
Okay.
Now here we are offering a course till of 6 years, that is from his after 10 till graduation. While doing this, the 12th is affiliated to State Board and BCom is affiliated to Mumbai University here in Mumbai, and then Delhi University in Delhi. So they are studying the subjects which are studied by any other child. So imagine when a child comes to us, he or she is at 18 years of age. Average age is 18, 17, 18. We have to start teaching them A for apple, B for ball. We studied this when we were in kindergarten. That is the base. When they pass out 10th, they are still not able to write their own name or their own address. So we take them from learning numbers to decimal, fraction. That's the elevation of the course in the whole 1 year.
Right.
And similarly for English, where they start from A for apple, B for ball, it ends till the SSC level of curriculum, 10th curriculum.
Goodness.
And all these are taught in our institute by using bilingual method, where teacher is speaking in English and using sign language, Indian sign language.
Wow.
And the whole classroom design is very assistive. So what we learned while working with them is most of them are visual learners because they are dependent on the visual sense. Sure. Now, all the classroom has a smart board. It's a mandate to have a smart board. Now, all these smart board also has auto captioning system. So if you speak and if you don't know sign language, still you can communicate with that's a caption coming on the smart board. Slowly and steadily, we start building their reading skills. Similarly, that smart board is directly connected with the internet. So from playing YouTube video to showing them something on the web becomes very easier for a teacher.
Right.
So that they start retaining. And from last 6.5 years, our results, the academic results have been 99%.
99% means like they've passed
12th and graduation.
That's pretty amazing, Aman.
Thank you.
Tell me that if when they finish their 12th board and you said you have offered commerce to them, two questions come to mind is one, how did Bombay University take you guys on? How was that process of them saying, okay, we are ready to, accredit this course and take it as part of our course? That was one. And the other, that what happens after they finish their degree?
So the first part is when we started our journey, when we started Teach. So the other founder, Dipesh, so he had a connect in Mumbai University in the distance and open learning department. And that's where the collaboration with the distance and open learning started, because after quite a discussion with them, they offered a free of cost space to us in their premises. But the teaching part, preparing students for their examinations, done by our institute. The Teach does that. The important element is the evaluation. Now, here we are dealing with students with disabilities. So the evaluation method has to be very much specific and specialized. So we, with collaboration with the University of Mumbai teachers and their examiners, we designed an evaluation parameters with them.
So that must have taken a long time to set that.
Yeah, it took us somewhere 3.5 years into the discussion mode and then implementing.
So what was your experience like working with the university in this?
So I think it was great. We have moved out of the university. We have our own campus now in Mumbai. In university, where we were dealing with 65 students, today we are dealing with 280 students. But from the course standpoint, from the exam evaluation standpoint, university still partners with us.
Right.
And if there is something happening in universities, it's very initial discussion though, but something is happening at UGC level for students with disability.
That's really commendable.
To answer your question, what happens after BCom? As an institute, since we are offering a holistic model where we are training them, when I talk about training them, every student goes under an aptitude test and his or her strength is identified.
Okay.
Imagine I will be more, since I was working in a bank, more logical. I love numbers. And so I am being trained on accounting, finance and MIS along with my BCom. So after 6 years of graduation, I become an expert in accounting, finance and MIS. And when I talk MIS, it goes till Power BI, creating dashboards. When I talk about accounting, it's Tally, Zoho. And when I talk about the Excel, it's about from basic to advanced.
That's something that even somebody like me would want to learn, What other kind of strengths do you identify people having?
The other strength is more creative. They're very much into arts, design, drawing. They start with basic designing, then taking to advanced, then learning all the tools, computer design tool, that Canva, Procreate, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, everything. So what we identified last year is where our first highest placement was into designing, into Edelweiss Tokyo. And the candidate got the highest package. So now one is becoming BCom, which is a formal stream, because coming from corporate, we know only education will never solve a problem. One has to have a specific domain's ability. And that is why we're preparing our candidates, accounting, finance, designing, and this 6 months ago, we started with coding and programming.
But how do you teach coding and programming to some, in sign language? I'm curious to know,
One thing I would say, I am fortunate to have a very young, passionate team who is able to learn sign language, because teaching them the basic qualification to join us is a master's.
Okay.
So when I talk about the bigger vision is building an equitable ecosystem for the speech and hearing impaired students. But by 2026, we want to have a premier higher education institute for these students. And to have a premier higher education institute, one of the criteria is to have premium teachers.
So now tell me something, Aman. What is it that brought you to this? I mean, you're a banker. Was there somebody in your family who had a speech and hearing impairment? Was it something that you experienced? I don't know what happened that made you shift?
I would say one phone call. And that too not to me, it was to Dipesh. So he received a phone call from a school saying that we don't have teachers, can you volunteer? So he approached me that shall we volunteer? I said yes, let's do it, because 5 days we were working, Saturdays were an off, we were just wasting our time. And primarily I am very passionate towards students, children, I love them. So the first day, I still remember, I went to the school. I was not aware it was a special school. I saw students signing and they were smiling at me. Inside, I was totally nervous. I was called to just to observe how things happen in that school. I saw that teacher was actually talking to them. She was not using sign language. So I thought that ये आसान है, ये हम कर लेंगे. So we started using PowerPoint presentation, YouTube per videos, and started teaching them. It was more visual.
Okay.
It was no text. During the same year, during 2014 की बात है ये, my aspiration was to become a vice president in the bank I was working. And for that, I joined an MBA course. Same year, 2014. So my schedule was morning to that school, afternoon to my executive program for MBA in RC Monchi here. Started learning sign language because I know that on Saturday I have to deliver better. I was not able to do my job there. And suddenly, when I gained some more confidence in sign language, I was a little more confident. I went to the classroom and एक concept मैंने introduce किया classroom में. वो आज भी हम करते हैं यहाँ पर. The concept is no teacher concept. So at some stage, and till today, I can communicate with them because they have taught me.
So lovely. And when you went to that school, you said you didn't know that they were disabled. And when you found out, what was your reaction at that time?
I went to all the special schools as an MBA project. अगर मैं किसी को ये बताता कि मुझे दुनिया बदलनी है, तो कोई खड़ा भी नहीं करता. I made the project because giving data to a student is little easier. And I got to know from these schools, from the social welfare departments, that there's no accountability what's happening after school. There's no data available. And that made me realize two things. One, which is biologically, we all are fortunate. So that is uncontrollable fortune, I will say. The controllable fortune is we all have an ecosystem. But what about them? So that is where the thought struck that we have to do something because that controllable fortune has to be equitable among all students. And that is what this thought gave birth to teach.
What drove you? What is it that drove you?
I think the kids, children. Imagine, हमें छोटी सी problem होती है, we keep dwelling into it. They are dealing with one problem for the whole lifetime. हम गाना सुनते हैं ना, लता मंगेशकर का, किसी रोने लग जाते हैं. आप सोचिए आपके कानों में वो आवाज़ जा ही नहीं रही है. Zoom call आज होता है, for a fraction of a second, we don't get to hear someone, we get so annoyed. The anxiety is so high. Imagine you're not able to hear and you have to still live with that anxiety for the rest of the life. Yet smiling, yet working hard. So this thing I've learned from them.
And it's right that we take our bodies and our abilities, it's biological fortune, we take it for granted. How do you measure your impact? How do you see it and how do you measure it?
So we measure impact into three main broad heads. One is our academic results. So which has been 99% in last 6.5 years. Now it will also be 99% this year. Second is our placements.
Right.
So after graduation, we work with 15 plus organizations. Our students into second year BCom or the graduation, they get into the corporate based on their own interest. So if I am into designing, I'll do my internship into designing. Based on their job roles, we identify corporates who have an intent and passion to take these students on board. We work with those corporates into sensitizing them, giving them that kind of post-placement support and making them ready for the placements. And at the end of the graduation, these students get absorbed into these corporates.
Nice.
So 2 parameters is academics, then the placements. The third one, which we have started right now, is their career progression. How our students, our alumni are progressing. Give an example, like 3 days ago, a student who passed out in 2022, working at ATOS Central, joined as an HR officer a year ago, got promoted as an HR associate in 2023.
Wonderful. So that's really something. But what kind of roles do they get in corporates and how open are corporates to receiving them?
I think job roles are mainly into designing. So the standard is any job role which involve less oral communication is suitable for them.
Okay.
That is the standard parameter. So they cannot work in a call center, but they can work in a chat center. On Zomato, you order food, but if you are facing problems, someone can chat.
That's right.
So now here what we work with corporates to identify what are those job roles which involve less oral communication, and so into operations, which have a standard instruction, which are into designing, which involves more creativity on job, designing a lanyard, designing a pamphlet, designing a brochure, everything these students can do. Third thing, as a silent receptionist, where someone can welcome someone very silently, because then you need just to give you tea, coffee, you want whatever is on the desk.
Right.
So those are the particular job roles we could identify for these set of students, what designing and MIS or any data related job.
The latest buzzword is inclusion. So how inclusive are corporates? Asli mein, not just for the sake of saying it. And what's the kind of response that you get?
I think what we measure or when we reach out to corporate is we reach out on their intent. Yes, the buzzword is inclusion, but again, as I said, that our disability is an invisible disability. There's so great philosopher Helen Keller. She has described this disability very much which is very apt. So she was a deaf blind. So she said that blindness separates people from thing. I cannot see your specs. I cannot see you. Deafness separates people from people. I cannot communicate to you. You cannot communicate with me. I think the corporates find it very difficult because it is not an easiest disability to get included. But if there is a support system, if there is a mechanism, then these candidates can actually work in a corporate. They could be we've proved that they're highly productive. We get disturbed by a ting or ping in our mobile phone, they do not. So they're into their work. And the most important thing is they hunger to prove. They say that I want to be equal, because they have been facing issues. So when it comes to shortlisting organizations, it is based on the pure intent and passion.
And when you meet intent is to make it work for somebody who's disabled.
Yes, make it work, take that risk to make it work. That's where we find those corporates as partners.
How many, I don't need a number, but I'm trying to understand how often do you come across corporates like this?
If we reach out to 51, we'll meet, we'll be ready to take an experiment, go away from the usual policy and make things work with us. That's the real inclusion happens. Because if you ask me what is inclusion, for me it's a mindset. If I've decided to be included or include someone into my journey, I'm inclusive. It is not a policy, it is not the buzzword, it is just simple mindset.
Absolutely, that is so well put. It's a mindset. If you decide that this person has to be a part of who we are, then you will do everything to make it happen.
Correct.
Aman and Teach are creating powerful impact. Aman has interesting beneficiary stories and very good insights of what the government can do to fill the gap. Stay tuned for the second part of this episode next Thursday, 4 p.m.